Hi, y'all. I'm Nicole Porter, and I am the host of the Lone Wolves Club podcast, a podcast for conversations you won't find in the church, a club for those who feel like a lone wolf. So, usually, I create my episodes to be an audio only format to be uploaded on your usual podcast platform like Spotify, Google Play, etc. But for the new year, I want to try something new, and so here I am creating my very first video to be uploaded here on my YouTube channel. And I particularly wanted to get into making commentary videos or reaction videos, especially because I have a lot that I want to say and react to regarding my fellow Christian content creators. So today we're going to be reacting to a video by Girl Defined. If you don't know who they are a pair of sisters, Bethany and Katie, I believe, and they create content geared towards Christian women, and usually Christian women who tend to lean a bit more to the conservative side of things, especially regarding religion and politics. So I thought it would be interesting to react to one of their videos because I don't personally lean that way in my ways of thinking about politics and religion. So I wanted to kind of offer a different perspective. So the video I'm going to be reacting to is the Barbie movie and Girl Defines take on that movie. In this video, Bethany and her husband Dave sit down to give their review and their thoughts of the Barbie movie. So just a warning, this is a long video, so grab a drink, grab a snack. I have my cup of tea to keep me fueled throughout this long video, and let's just go ahead and get into it already.
I'm just kidding, that's enough. And I'm great at doing stuff.
I'm gonna go first and do the intro.
Okay.
I'm sorry, y'all. I wasn't expecting that. That was so funny. Apparently he liked it. I mean, he liked the song about Kid. Let's keep going.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
What's up, y'all? It's Bethany and Dave here, and we are here to deliver a Barbie review.
Or like I like to call it, shiny, happy people.
What?
If you think about it. Just think about it for a little bit.
Huh. Yeah. Which we have a review on Tiny Happy People, so thanks for the plug.
Oh, so I actually made my own episode too about shiny happy people. Speaking of plugging things, again, I will link that down below if you want to watch it. And now I have an idea for what I want to do after this video. I kind of want to react to their take on shiny happy people because again, I feel like we're gonna have some differing opinions. So keep an eye out for that.
Okay, tell us how you ended up being the one here to give a Barbie review.
I'm here because the other night you said, hey, we can get someone to watch the kids and go see Barbie together. And I was like, like a free date. So
So
I love how she tried to set up this whole premise of them going to the Barbie movie, or while he was sitting down and reviewing it, as like this cutesy thing, like, tell us the story of how you're here sitting down giving the review of the Barbie movie. And he's basically like, you hired a babysitter and we went out on a date because you told me you wanted to see it. like girl, okay.
So we went.
Okay.
And like a more official, like, oh, dude, go see Barbie so we can do a review. And that's the only reason that I would really be interested to see Barbie. So
Totally.
Yeah.
There were a lot of couples there, though. Okay.
Yeah.
Like
unless you were a movie-going type of person.
Yeah.
You know, in which case, like, oh, we go to movies and stuff. But I was not expecting you would want to go see it.
I didn't.
So
It was, you...
Did you hear her right out the gate? He's like, I didn't expect that you would want to go see this. And she's like, I didn't. So if that gives any indication of what she thinks about the movie, you know, we're already clued in, right?
Asking me that, like, you've been suggesting, you're like, hey, you should go see Barbie with girls, or you should go see it with friends, and you kept asking me, like, since it's come out, if I've been interested in going to see it. And for some reason, I don't know, like, it just didn't strike me as like super interesting or something that I really wanted to see. But I was like, everyone's talking about this, and the GDM crew probably wants to hear some thoughts or take on it. For those of you who have seen it or haven't, there will
I love how she's like, for some reason, I just didn't think I was gonna like it. I don't know, girl, probably because you follow a bunch of like-minded, you know, more traditional Christian women who were probably already putting it down for being too feminist. You know, I don't know, just right off the top of my head, that might have been a reason why you didn't want to go.
definitely be spoilers. So just if you're really excited, then don't listen.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. So then I saw our friends Paul and Morgan. They went and saw it. They have a great review too. You can go over there to the Paul and Morgan show and watch their review. They were funny because they got tickets, but the movie was packed, so they couldn't even sit together. So that was funny. We did get to sit together. Okay.
That wasn't funny.
So
We kicked some people out.
Do you want to give, like, for those who aren't up to date on what the Barbie movie is, you want to give the overview? I don't know, the story?
Oh, gosh. Not really. It's...
He says, not really. She says, do you want to give the overview? And he says, not really. Honestly, I don't mean this in a shade. I'm not laughing to be shady. I just think it's funny because it actually reminds me of me and my husband. My husband is the worst about summarizing or reviewing things. He will hype up a movie so much. He'll be like, oh, this movie, he loves like old movies like The Thing or Alien, like the first Alien. And he'll be like, oh, it's amazing. It's so good. It changed the course of cinema. And I'll be like, okay, well, what was it about? What is it about? And then he'll just like give me the bare minimum. He'll be like, well, you know, there's this crew in space and then like an alien is found on their ship, and he just explains it in such like bare bone ways. So anyway, I'm not being shady, but I just thought it was really funny how he was like, not really, because I can imagine my husband doing the same. But anyway, if you haven't seen the Barbie movie, pay attention because they're going to give you a quick overview.
Basically the doll, Barbie, but they basically make a whole world. Like, she lives in this world, the Barbie Land, and Barbie Land is based on all of company Mattel's products over the years, and like she has her own house, and she says hi to other Barbies that also live in the same world. They're all named the same, basically. And then she says,
Barbie.
Hi, Barbie. She says hi to Ken.
Hi, Barbie.
But it's a kind of very self-aware, attempting to be a very self-aware kind of style, where you sort of are like, the dolls exist with equality, and nobody is ever sad or whatever, but just kind of in a very ironic way and stuff like that. And so the tone, the tone of the movie definitely is satirical, and it's.
I agree. It is very satirical, so I agree with Dave about that. And I'm glad that he got that, because I feel like so many, not even just Christians, but I feel like so many people in general who were kind of upset and offended by the Barbie movie were missing the point that it is satire. It is meant to be lighthearted and a joke. Yes, there are some serious elements to it, but overall, I think it was intended to be a lighthearted, satirical look at today's society. So I'm glad he got that, because a lot of people, kind of went over their head.
Definitely kind of winking and, all over the place and trying to kind of, be smart. I was kind of trying to be intellectual. Be super smart. Which I actually enjoyed. So that, I would enjoy it more than Bethany. But
the tea, he already says, I enjoyed it more than you. The tea.
Expecting just a fairy tale like a Disney princess movie or something like that. That's not what this was.
Boo!
Right. So,
Boo, Barbie.
so I kind of went in knowing that it probably wasn't that. It's.
You can tell she really wanted to get that boo in. She was holding it in. I could read her body language and see her jaw and how tense it was. She just really wanted to be able to boo Barbie.
So I wasn't as disappointed. I figured, or I'd heard, that it had more of that kind of cultural commentary, sort of feminist angle, which it did. I would say largely in a certain sense, but I enjoyed all that. There was a pretty, again, intellectual, but existential message, which I like.
So Dave is on record saying he enjoyed it. He enjoyed the Barbie movie, even the feminist angle, because he was mostly there for the overall message, which was about our, circumstance as humans and how we define ourselves and what essentially makes us human. So again, way to go, Dave, for seeing deeper than the feminist arguments.
As just kind of a philosophy, it's fun. And just like a lot of successful Hollywood movies, they're going to have an existentialist message. And it basically goes something like, what does it really mean to be human? Do we have a creator? If we do have a creator, what does that mean for our life purpose? Is purpose fixed, or is it something that we create? And typically the existentialists will say, meaning is not inherent to reality, it's something that you create. And so it had a very garden variety version of that message.
So Dave is a bit of an intellectual here. He's talking about, just wanting to analyze the human condition and figure out what it means, our place in the universe, our purpose. And yeah, it seems like he's quite the intellectual and really, again, kind of dug a bit deeper to get to the meat of the message.
Along with that kind of existentialist streak is self-development. So I'm really into a lot of that stuff, just as not necessarily as the whole entirety of a worldview, but it's got a lot of interesting ideas. And so I'd rather a movie move in that direction than some of the other directions. So I actually appreciated a lot about how Barbie, I think, and the more I thought about it, the more I appreciated this, and the more I read about it too, where it wasn't really trying, I think a lot of conservatives thought, oh, it's just bashing men. And I think that what it was doing was it was more saying, like, here's a stereotypical world, Barbie land, and here are some of the impacts on the real world with expectations for women and stuff like that, and here are some of the kind of tropes and stereotypes about patriarchy, and we're going to kind of explore that. What if patriarchy came to Barbie land? At one point. And so I really like that idea. It was very experimental to me of just like, let's put these stereotypes along with these stereotypes, and let's flip the power dynamic, and then let's see what happens, and then let's flip it back, and then let's like try to come to something that maybe transcends both of those. And I think the filmmakers did try to do that, especially near the end. They tried to, and we can go into some of why
about that. Rolling my eye.
You're okay, but no, I think that
not at you, I like that.
She says, I'm resisting rolling my eyes. Okay. Well, I let Dave talk for a while because I thought it was really interesting. One, to see that he doesn't label himself as a conservative. He said some conservatives thought X, Y, or Z, not some Christians. So it's interesting that he kind of made that distinction and wanted to seem to kind of almost separate himself from that title. I wonder how Bethany would define herself. Bethany, I think. I wonder how she would define herself. I haven't really talked a lot about her because I haven't really agreed with her. I've agreed with Dave more, but I'll get to her. Actually, speaking of, I think it's really interesting that, again, Dave saw what Bethany could not, and he saw it more as just kind of stereotypes of men, not necessarily saying this is how it is all the time, but this is a common experience that many women have had with many men, especially at the end when the Kens take over Barbie Land and, all of the houses look like frat boy bachelor pads with like leather furniture and minimal decor. I mean, I've been in my fair share of frat houses and Dojo Mojo Casa houses. So I thought they got that to a T. And I think that is what Dave is unpacking here, is that yes, some men are like this, but not all men are. This movie is more so just speaking to the dynamic that exists between some men and some women. So I think he hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, well,
way kinder and
well,
more
it's
generous.
typical of. I mean, these days it's pretty typical to just have a straight up. Here's the power dynamic. Here's who's been oppressed, and then let's basically like flip that, and the people who should be leading are the people who have been oppressed. And the movie, I don't think the movie exactly went there in
Really?
the final analysis. In terms of what happens in the real world.
Again, here too, I think it's interesting that where Dave sees the Barbie movie as ending at a place where men and women are equal, where the Ken and the Barbies are finally on equal footing, so to speak, Bethany does not. Because I agree with Dave. I think that the movie ended with the Barbies, if I remember right, they were like less ambivalent towards the Kens. They were more appreciative and more inclusive, where, in the previous half of the movie, they were more dismissive and more ambivalent and more aloof. So yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's how it ends. And so I agree with Dave that it ends with the Barbies and the Kens on more of a neutral, even playing field, rather than the Barbies kind of elevating themselves towards above the Kens, and then later the Kens trying to steal the power. So I agree with Dave again.
don't think that the movie was necessarily trying to say, oh, it would be better if women were in charge of everything.
Barbie Land, they made that clear. But then
in Barbie Land, they did, but Barbie Land is a very
like they didn't really have a solid answer.
It was a little
like,
convoluted.
Now what? Now what happens to Barbie? Like,
which that's more exactly what I want to talk about. But so I liked all that. Yeah, I liked all that. All that exploration is fun. The philosophical explorations are fun. Ken was a hoot. He was so funny, and Weird Barbie as well. So those were my two favorite parts, I would say. The musical numbers. I'm just Ken. It's so funny.
I wanted something more of that.
And the Ken story arc too, for his character arc is so, in my opinion, again, some things which these are so. I thought that there were some things that were very well done about that.
I mean, Ken was the best part.
Those are just some of my positives. Yeah,
it's it's funny because it's all about like women and female empowerment and how like we've been oppressed so much about the patriarchy. Oh my gosh! But it was funny because it's like so now we have like women director producing Barbie the main character, but then they kind of like. Ken kind of became the star of the show. And when I see people talking about it, people are like obsessed with that song. They thought he was hilarious. So it's like, man, if you wanted this to be like,
the man steals the show. Go
he kind of stole the show, like because women, when we start to take ourselves so serious.
So much to unpack. I mean, I think Ken's story arc was intended to be entertaining, and Barbie's story arc was intended to be more serious and more about self-discovery. So, it makes sense that, like, people would be entertained by Ken because he went on a more humorous, more fantastical kind of journey, whereas Barbie went on more of a serious, introspective journey. Also, I think it's interesting the way Bethany is talking about the Barbie movie, and I don't mean like what she's talking about, I mean like her tone of voice. It's interesting that she's using this kind of whiny, like bratty voice almost about like, complaining about like, oh, people, we're all about the patriarchy and it's just all about the patriarchy and that was just the whole message. She had that kind of tone, whereas Dave has kind of more of an even, more, respectful kind of tone. So I think it's interesting, even considering their attitudes towards the movie. You can see that, Dave is more open by the way he talks, by his facial expressions, and Bethany definitely seems more closed down by having this kind of whiny, bratty, like, oh, why was it about the patriarchy so much, kind of attitude. So I think that's interesting too. But yeah, let's see what she says about women taking themselves too seriously.
And we try to become like I don't know, all like instead of just like go and do and be what you want, they have to say it all. Like, no, this is where we've been and this is where we're going. Like, it's like Barbie took herself so seriously, like almost from the beginning, and then like she would have these moments of not being serious, but Ken like never really took himself seriously, so he was much more likable.
Well, yeah, I mean, Ken to me was interesting because he I would sort of describe him as having no guile. He has no, like, what he says is basically what's in his mind, and so it's a character that's very easy to read in some ways, and you don't have that with every character in the movie, and so
there's a phrase going around called internalized misogyny, and I think Bethany is suffering from that. So if you don't know, internalized misogyny means that when you as a woman have been surrounded by men who, and also maybe women who have a misogynistic attitude. So this could be maybe the teachers you had at school, maybe the kind of church that you went to and the kind of church environment that you grew up in. It could have even been your home environment. It could have been things that your dad said about women that you overheard. It could be things that your brothers said about women that you overheard, or even things that your own mom said about women that are disparaging and belittling and ultimately misogynistic. And so, yeah, I think Bethany suffers from that because it's really interesting how tweaked she gets about Barbie taking herself too seriously. And I think the reason why Barbie was portrayed in the way that she was portrayed is because, one, she's having an existential crisis. It's hard to be all fun and games when, your world and life as you know is crumbling underneath your feet. But I think Barbie was supposed to be taken seriously because I think the director is trying to show the plight and the situation of many women that we are not taken seriously all the time, and that we have to work a lot harder to be taken seriously, especially in positions of authority and leadership. Women have to prove themselves way, way more than men do in those kinds of positions. So I think it's interesting that a woman would belittle another woman for taking herself too seriously, when that is unfortunately the reality for many of us women, that we have to be serious, we have to work harder, we have to put in overtime, we have to be go-getters, because people's inclination is to not always take us seriously.
I think for me, his character arc is very clear and fun to follow, because he goes from. Should we get into kind of the list? Okay, so he goes from. He goes into the real world and he discovers patriarchy, because he didn't have that in Barbie Land. In Barbie Land, it's basically a utopian matriarchy, and so the women are sort of the first class group, and then the Ken dolls are sort of the secondary class.
Like they access the random.
Yeah, we don't even know where they live. Where does Ken live? I don't know. And every night is girls' night. He's constantly excluded from female spaces, if you want to put it that way. So it's kind of like taking what a lot of people talk about today, which has plenty of merit to that conversation, but saying, okay, women are excluded from this space, and basically saying, well, in Barbie Land, it's the opposite. It's, this is a woman's world, and men are sort of excluded. And so he is. He gets his sense of self from the gaze of Barbie. So Barbie looks at him, and that's how he basically gets a sense of self. His identity is wrapped up in what she thinks of him.
Sorry, I was just letting them talk because I didn't want to, interrupt them in the middle of a thought. But I think it's interesting their perspective or interpretation of Barbie Land, and how, they call the Kens second-class citizens, and Barbie Land is a matriarchy, a utopia. I think Greta Gerwig was trying to kind of show, as they were hinting at, what a world would look like where women are on top and women are in charge and women are the leaders, more so than men are. Because in today's society, at least in America, we have more. There's never been a female president, for example. There's never been so many women on, like, the Supreme Court, for example. It's usually a lot of men. There are way more men in politics than there are women, for example. When you look at churches, women are widely still not encouraged to be the main pastor of a church. They might be able to get up and give a sermon here and there, but they're not invited all the time to be the main head pastor of a church, for example. So yes, I think on one level, Greta Gerwig was trying to point at that in today's society, that it is a more male-dominated society in a way. But she also mentioned that the reason why the Barbies are so aloof and indifferent to the Kens is because it mirrors how little girls play with Barbie dolls. And when you're a little girl, you're excited about Barbie. You're not excited about Ken. I only bought Ken dolls just to go with my Barbie doll. I didn't really care about Ken. I didn't have fun dressing up Ken or anything like that, but I bought him to go along with Barbie, So I think it works on two different levels, and I think not a lot of people see, that kind of nuance. So I just wanted to point that out.
And her giving him attention is a very weak place to be, but at least it's easy to read. It's very simple. Oh, okay. And the narrator even says that. Like, Ken exists basically for Barbie to look at him. Hey, Barbie, and she said, hey, Ken. He's like, yes. If she says, hey, Ken, to another Ken, then he's like, no.
Yeah.
So he discovers patriarchy and then brings patriarchy back to Barbie Land and flips everything and brainwashes all the Barbie dolls, basically, so that he and the other Ken dolls can basically run the show. And so he goes from this weak, sort of subservient, like, I don't exist if she's not in my world, to this basically like, you're in my world to serve me. And which is the same weakness, except the opposite.
Yeah.
This is just the opposite end of the spectrum, but it's no more developed. It's a very underdeveloped mode. And so I like all that. That's actually, a lot of us men have either one of those. Either we build our life around a woman or a an individual that we can look up to, or we tend to want someone to service us and sort of build their life around us. Either way, it's a weak place to be. So I actually think that whole line that I just outlined is actually great. in a lot of ways.
I mean,
So, yeah, it's interesting that Dave seems to kind of get the human condition, and he kind of tries to get what the filmmakers were honing in on is that, we all have a sense of self, and we either let other people define our sense of self, or we shape our sense of self from within. And that is a journey. It's a journey figuring out who you are. It's a journey defining yourself. And so that's essentially what the Barbie movie is about. It's a story about finding yourself and finding your identity and your self-worth, and defining yourself on your own terms, not on society's terms or other people's terms. So it's encouraging to see that Dave at least kind of gets the deeper meaning behind the movie.
interesting because I was telling you, like, I watched the Selena Gomez documentary, and it basically ends with her being like, I am enough. And it's kind of what the Barbie movie ends with. It's just like the very popular thing to say or to believe, is to just, like, I mean, Ken literally wears like a sweater at the end that says he's enough, but then with a big K, so he's kind of, like a Ken enough. And Barbie is setting out to be kind of like ordinary Barbie, just like a normal person in the world, just like enough as who she is. She doesn't have to be stereotypical Barbie. She doesn't have to always look perfect. She can get cellulite. She can have flat feet, and she is enough. And so to me, it's really sad that that's where we end things. Like, we basically are telling people like that's the ultimate end goal. Like, you are enough. But like, I just
So, you know how we talked about internalized misogyny just a little bit ago? Again, it is very clear to me that that is what Bethany is suffering with, because she seems really, uncomfortable with the idea that people need to build up their self-worth, especially women. And that women need to learn to embrace themselves as they are, accept themselves as they are, view themselves as worthy and capable and enough just as they are. So it's very evident this is what's going on here, is some internalized misogyny. Because it's interesting that, she has such a hard time wrapping her mind around the fact that, yeah, some women and men, but some women need to encourage themselves. Maybe a lot of women need to encourage themselves that we're enough as we are. So it's weird that she's being so harsh on that idea.
like, what is that rooted in? Just like believing it, just hoping like I am enough. I don't know. As a Christian, to me, that's like Ali Bestaki has a book, You're Not Enough, and that's okay because Christ is enough, and we find our sense of identity and self in Him. And so, to me, that's so crucial as a Christian because I'll never be good enough. I'm gonna have hard days. I'm gonna have moments where I don't like the way that I look. I'm not gonna always, like, even if I can be confident, like, at the end of the day, I do have a longing to be named by someone, my creator, to have an identity outside of myself, to live for something greater than myself. And so these movies that end like Barbie with like this whole big build up and all of this, and then it's just kind of like, you are enough. It's like, but how does that really help? And like, how is that the final message? Like, how have we come to this point in time where that is like the grand conclusion? So that kind of bugs me, irks me. I think we probably view it differently.
So again, for whatever reason, Bethany is really harsh on this idea of people finding self-worth within themselves. I think two things can be true at once. I think we can, of course, look to God as our source of identity. We can look to God to remind us of who He says we are, because He calls us worthy, He calls us sanctified, He calls us His sons and His daughters. So yes, we can absolutely look to Christ for reminders of who we are and that we are enough. But I think we can also look within too and remind ourselves and go on the journey of discovering ourselves. And through that, realizing that, yeah, we are enough as we are. So yeah, I think two things can be true at once. I think you can find your self-worth from within, but of course you can also find it from, viewing your life and yourself through God's eyes. So yeah, I don't know why she's so against this idea of people embracing that they're enough as they are, that they have self-worth on their own. And again, at the beginning of the video, I talked about how, or she talked about rather, how they went into the movie knowing that it wasn't a Christian movie, knowing that the director wasn't Christian, knowing that it wasn't going to have a Christian message about Christian morals or values or anything like that. So she wasn't worried about that, and she wasn't going to try to analyze it through a Christian lens. But then here she says, well, as a Christian, I just wish that they carried that message further. Why is everyone ending on, these messages about like you're enough as you are and blah blah blah? Like, why can't they take it further? And it's like, well, people aren't going to take it further because, again, people don't believe in God. So most people think that they're enough as they are, and they don't look to God as the source of their identity, the source of their strength, the source of their worth and their value in the way that Christians do. So, when you're a director making a movie and you're looking for an inspirational message to impart upon your audience, you're probably going to pick a message like, hey, you're enough as you are, because, again, everyone can relate to that. Men, women, people around the world can relate to that feeling of not being enough. It's just part of being a human. So I don't think it's a bad message to land on. I think it is a hopeful one to land on, that anyone can, learn from, whether, wherever you base your self-worth, whether you base it in God or not, you can still embrace the idea that you're enough as you are and look within to find that self-worth.
So this is the big debate amongst conservatives particularly, is some say, no, they were not bashing on men. They were not making men look bad. And then others are saying, yes, they were totally bashing on men. They, men are just, were made, like, genuinely made to be like total idiots. It wasn't just supposed to be funny. So what do you think about that?
First of all, neither stereotypical Barbie land nor the real world were that realistic. So the real world in the movie Barbie is like stereotypical real world from the perspective of, I don't know, second and third wave feminists or something, and some post feminists too. I think that the men they're bashing in the movie, the men they're bashing are doofuses. I don't necessarily see there being a message as, all men are like this. To me, it's actually
Ben. No, not Ben. Dave. Yes, 1,000 times yes, I agree with you so much that I don't think, when the kids were made to look dumb and silly and like doofuses, I don't think there was the message that all men are like that. I think it was just the men that existed in Barbie Dreamland, and again, I think if you're looking at it from that extra layer of viewing this movie as, how children play with dolls, well, of course, like, again, it's all about Barbie. And so if a girl is playing with a Barbie doll and a Ken doll, of course, they're going to make Ken look dumb and silly and not as important as Barbie, not as smart as Barbie, not as put together as Barbie. Ken is just there to be an accessory to Barbie in the way that little girls and boys play with Barbie. So if you look at it from that layer, it kind of makes sense too as to why all of the Kens were kind of airheads. And I mean, of course, again, you can argue that Greta Gerwig is poking fun at a stereotypical view of, some kind of men. And there is that too. But again, I think it exists on two levels and two layers. And I'm glad to see that David also kind of seems to get that nuance.
It's like all the men in the movie are like this. There's not really any man in the movie that's really that great or has any.
And then all the Barbie dolls have to be like woken up to this, to realize that they have been living under the patriarchy. But it's like these are like feminist talking points, It's like back in the day, like women need to know that, like they would literally, like, we have to tell them how unhappy they are in their homes. We have to tell them how unhappy they are as mothers.
The idea is that they're idiots and they're brainwashed. So there actually is kind of a streak within certain forms of feminism where you're under a false consciousness if you don't really if you're not awakened to the reality that's the systemic sexism in society, then you're basically living in false consciousness. You're brainwashed by the patriarchy.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what happens in Barbie Land. They're brainwashed, and and they have to wake up when they're sort of given phrases of cognitive dissonance. You have.
It's funny that, Bethany of all people would mention this idea of like brainwashing and how, women needed to be woken up to the idea that they were under the thumb of patriarchy and all of that, because, I think that's similar to her view of Christianity, actually, and how she tries to evangelize people if she wants to wake people up to the idea that, like, hey, you are, living a life that is so far from God, and you woken up to the fact that God loves you and God cherishes you, and God, wants you to have a relationship with him. And, she's all about this like traditional wife kind of lifestyle where you submit to your husband and you view your husband as the leader of the household, and you know your place as a woman and he knows his place as a man. And that's, kind of brainwashing too, just in the opposite direction. Instead of brainwashing women that they don't need a man and that they need to wake up and get out from under the thumb of patriarchy, Bethany makes a lot of content where she tries to get women to go back to the old ways of being a woman, which again is to, serve men, look after men, let men lead you and guide you, and all of that. So, it's a little bit of the pot calling the kettle black.
To be thin, but not talk about being thin, or you have to be thin, not too thin, and you can't talk about, but you have to talk about health, or they're like, you need to not, you need to mother him, but you need to not remind him of his mother, all the things like this, where it's things that actually, to some degree, and in many relationships, are probably true.
Totally.
Funny true. Those are the things that sort of wake the Barbies up to, oh my goodness, I've been asleep, and yes, I can now see clearly. So I don't think people are necessarily just attending for the deconstruction. They might be there for it, but they're not necessarily all coming for it.
Well, and it's funny because they're like, they were, if you go and see it, and if you have seen it, it was like, it was past the point of being like satirical and like, oh, ha ha. It was like, no, they're pretty serious. Like, I thought, are we sure it's like this political or this woke? Like, are they just joking? And it was like super, like, it was just so that way. And so it's just almost insulting. It's like that. It's like you feel like they're telling you, like, you need to be this way or else you're like stuck under old ways of thinking. And it's like, oh my gosh.
I mean, but I have no problem with that. That's their opinion. Whatever.
No, I know, but I mean, for
I live for the disagreements. I do. I feel like Dave is becoming, one of us. One of us who can, wrestle with some cognitive dissonance, to use a word he threw around earlier, which is the idea that, something is so against your beliefs, but you're not aware of it, right? It's like really fundamentalist Christians who think it's okay to, tell people they're going to hell and boycott funerals of gay men and women who serve in the military. But then when you try to challenge them with the idea of like, well, hey, doesn't the Bible say love your neighbor as you love yourself? That cognitive dissonance can't exist in their mind. They don't know how to make sense of that because their worldview is that gay people deserve to, burn in hell. And they can't wrestle with the fact that the Bible that they claim to read and the God they claim to serve says, no, you have to love your neighbor as yourself, even your gay neighbor. So that's the idea of cognitive dissonance. And I think it's funny that, again, Bethany seems to really struggle with cognitive dissonance. She seems to struggle with the idea that not everyone thinks like her, not everyone believes like her, not everyone shares that worldview. Like, I love how when she was getting on her high horse about like, oh, they're basically spoon feeding you these ideals and they're so woke and they're so political and they're so whatever. I love how Dave was just like, hey, that's their point of view. That's, that's their perspective. It's their story to tell, and, I'm fine with that. I think more people need to have that kind of attitude of like, hey, I can disagree with you and still be friends with you. We don't always have to see eye to eye, because I think a lot of people like Bethany kind of tend to live in an echo chamber where they only want to hear voices that sound like hers. She only wants to surround herself with people who think like her, believe like her, vote like her, all of that. And it seems like Dave is more open to having conversations with people who don't share the same worldview or political views or religious views. And I think that's really encouraging and refreshing, and he's becoming one of us.
But and it's like these characters, like the people in real life, like they not everyone just wants to be like individual and like conquering the whole world. Like, we love having like a person or even to be pursued. So it's just like ridiculous.
But they don't want to be with men. They don't want to be with any of the men in the movie. It's like, you shouldn't.
Well, because they made them all idiots.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they did that.
So that's more like, well, actually, good men that honor and love women well are made to look even better.
That's true.
That's how I view the movie. It's like, it's more like, yeah, if you're surrounded by guys like that, I'm very sorry. That is really rough. And the movie doesn't explicitly say all men are like this.
Amen, Dave. Amen. Yeah, the movie never said that all men were like that. It just presented the kins as kins. And again, if you look at it on that level of how, children play with Barbie dolls, it's all about Barbie once again. So of course the kins are just kind of going to be there like an accessory, and the Barbies are going to be aloof or indifferent to them or whatever. So yeah, if you look at it from that lens, it makes sense. And yeah, I agree with what Dave said. The movie never said that all men were like that. It just portrayed a certain kind of man that, again, does exist. I 100% have sat there while a guy has sang at me and played guitar at me for 5 hours. I've definitely been in, dojo mojo casa houses. I've definitely interacted with men that are like the kins. They are out there. But are all men like that? No. Just like all women aren't, like the Barbies, right? Like it was just a stereotype, but stereotypes don't mean everyone. It means that this type of person just exists in the world, and that's it.
I think did they say all men hate women at one point, or they hate each other? But I more walk away going like, yeah, don't be with any of those guys. Definitely.
Why do you think they didn't have a single, like there was not one person who was not one man who was not.
There's Alan. Alan was a kind of out of the box kind of guy. Nobody.
Again, I think it's really funny that like Dave walks away from the movie with kind of a more upbeat perspective of like, hey, that movie made real men actually look great, because most real men aren't like the kins. Again, that's just a stereotype. That doesn't mean all men are that way. Sure, those men exist and are out there. But yeah, I mean, I love that he walked away feeling better about himself and better about, the men in his life as a whole. And and he didn't really take it that seriously, like all the jabs about men, because I think if you're a secure guy, then you're not like that. You're not a kin. And so you can laugh it off and shrug it off and appreciate, okay, yeah, these kinds of guys are out there, and yeah, women have to interact with guys like this. And you can laugh at that just in the way that women were laughing and being like, yep, those men are out there. So yeah, I mean, I love that. And I think it's funny that, Bethany is the one taking it way more seriously and getting way more offended than he is. And the movie was not unkind to women at all, but here she is getting so offended about it.
All of the guys in the real world and in Barbie land, every single last one is portrayed as like literally a complete idiot. Like beyond idiot.
Yeah, true.
Like he's such an idiot, it's almost like,
I mean, here's the thing though. We've heard these statistics and stuff. Women are outstripping men in so many different sectors in our society, education and careers and stuff. It's like men are very much falling behind. It seems like there's a crisis of identity amongst many men. So there are movements that are sort of capturing a lot of these men that are really stereotypical, that are like the manosphere that I've heard of. I don't know much about it, but it's this sort of idea that if the feminists say this, you sort of say the opposite. Like the feminists say, they have all the power. And so you're like, it's good to have power. You basically just affirm that sort of thing. And there are a lot of groups like that. And there are a lot.
Yeah, there are a lot of groups like, the Andrew Tates of the world, or, incels, which, if you don't know, that stands for involuntarily celibate. And it's men who feel like they are forced to be celibate because women won't look their way, women won't pay attention to them, women only want, the good guy or the jock or the whatever, and women are just shallow and vapid, but, I still want to be with them, and yeah, those men exist. And it is interesting to see, like Dave said, how men are kind of falling behind when it comes to education, when it comes to earning, 6 figures. Even like women are breaking into the realm of science and math and engineering in so many male-dominated arenas. And I also saw an interesting article about how there are more single men than there are women. And the study basically showed that a lot of women are either choosing not to be in a relationship, or they are dating older men, or they're dating other women. And so I don't think it's so much that women think they don't need men, but I think women are now seeing that we can just be more choosy about who we end up with, because there are dating apps that you can use to kind of widen your dating pool. Women don't need men in the way that women in the past did, right? Women earn their own money, women can vote, women can do all these things. And so we don't need men in that way anymore. And so that affords women the opportunity to be more choosy when it comes to settling down and finding a significant other. So I think Dave is right. I think the tide is kind of turning where it is kind of becoming a more female dominated world because women are finally kind of embracing the fact that they can stand on their own 2 feet and they can go into places that were previously closed off.
The guys that treat the women that they're with like that, very much like you're here to serve me, either, and in both ways. The weak sort of nice guy approach where I build my life around you and your happiness is the most important thing in my life and our relationship is the most important thing. That's a very weak position to be in, and just as much as the jerk version where it's like you need to serve me and stuff. But the thing is, it seems to me like that very much exists. Men like that were like that sometimes.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is like,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that Dave seems to kind of get like, again, like the female perspective and the kind of men that women are interacting with nowadays, the kind of pockets of men that exist in society that are the Andrew Tates of the world, the incels of the world, where they think that women are just there to serve them, and the idea of women being in power is just silly and fluff and whatever. Yeah, so I mean, as a woman, it's really encouraging to hear Dave validate that, like, yeah, there are some messed up pockets of men that women have to deal with and interact with because that Andrew Tate kind of guy might be their boss. That, domineering, blowhard kind of dude might be their professor. Women have to deal with men in all kinds of different arenas because, again, like men kind of dominate a lot of arenas still today. And so, yeah, I mean, that's one of the challenges that women are up against is, we don't know when we're going to run into a guy that has this kind of attitude that women should be subservient to them. And that's just kind of the sad reality of being a woman. You never know, when you're going to encounter that kind of guy. It could be your landlord, could be one of your professors, could be one of your bosses, your coworkers. And that's a tough situation to be in when you're faced with that kind of person that doesn't believe your gender should be equal to them. So yeah, Dave, I'm encouraged that you seem to get the female perspective and understand that there are some men out there like that too. Also, for the sake of being fair, I did want to add that, of course, there are women out there that hate men just to hate them, and men have to deal with those kind of women too. But I think the chances of a woman running into a man that believes women should be put down and under the thumb of patriarchy, even if they don't like obviously acknowledge that or subconsciously, they have that in the back of their mind. But whatever the case, I think women run into that kind of man more often than men run into the kind of woman that hates a man just to hate a man, if that makes sense.
we had an interview with Nancy Piercy, and you can listen to it. It's a few episodes back, all on the toxic war on masculinity. And I think that that's true. I think that we've swung so far to this side of like, not just that women want to have equality with men, but they want men have to be like stumped and men have to go down. And like Nancy Piercy was saying, like, it's all these jokes, like testosterone is cancer, and we have to basically like weed out men from our, like, men are the problem. And I think of raising a son, and it's like, I do not want to raise him basically viewing his manhood and his masculinity as a problem.
Oh, I think you'll be okay. We will.
So I'm not saying this is right or fair, but there's the term like female rage or feminine rage, and it encapsulates the idea that like women have been put down and suppressed and belittled for such a long time that there's like this rage, like women just want to rage against the machine and rage against men. And so yes, I'm sure there are some women out there that think that men need to be stomped into the ground, and that men need to know what it feels like to be put down, to be oppressed, and to be belittled. And again, I'm not saying that's right or fair or okay, But I can see as a woman where that kind of rage comes from when you have seen, you know, your great grandma, your mom, and even yourself be under the thumb of patriarchy. And so, yeah, it kind of makes sense. And I think that's why the pendulum is kind of swinging in the other direction where women are just raging, just raging against the machine. Also, I love too when she tries to get all dramatic and she's like, I don't want to raise my son thinking that his manhood or masculinity is a problem. And then Dave is like, he'll be okay. It's like, girl, it's not that dramatic, okay? You can instill in your son those values that he is worthy as a man, that his masculinity and manhood is valuable just as much as a woman's femininity and womanhood is valuable.
Thank you.
Okay, so we gotta start wrapping it up here.
Okay.
My overall opinion of the movie and score, if we did a 1 to 10, I was more even 1 to 10. I like that.
I hate the one.
Okay, I'll do a 1 to 10.
I want to guess. I'm going to guess right now. I'm going to say she's going to rate it a 4. So she's going to rate the whole movie a 4 out of 10. 10 being the best.
My overall, okay, like I was going into it, I didn't read reviews, like I didn't watch any reviews or listen to any reviews before going to see it because I wanted to be as open-minded as possible. And I just went in like, I hope this will be interesting, engaging. I hope at least like, I'm there for like 2 hours and we paid this money and we have a babysitter. Like hopefully I'll just be like entertained and engaged. And I felt like very much kind of like it was a snooze fest. Like there was like Ken was really funny and the Kens were really funny and Weird Barbie was really funny, but outside of that, it was just honestly like boring to me. And I just felt like it was so obvious and like I was saying, you can pretty much tell the storyline from the beginning. So that was kind of like a disappointment. Like why, even if you remove all of their messaging out of it, like all the wokeness, all the political stuff, all the messaging, like even just the story as a whole to me was so lacking. Like I just felt like there was so much more they could do with that. So just like on that level, it was really not entertaining. Like it's not a movie I'm ever gonna pull out and be like, girls' night, which would have been so fun.
But every night, girls' night.
It would have been so awesome, like or such a fun date night.
She
Or like,
didn't get the
yeah,
joke.
all get dressed up and go see it again. But it's like to me,
Dave
it's like
did.
one time. Like
He's
I was
one of
talking to
us.
her about it, and she's like, "Oh, should I go see it?" And I'm like, "No, like it was literally such a bore, such a snooze." So that is just like to me. And then all the messaging where it's like it wasn't even just like joking afterwards. It's like so serious. Like why is it? Barbie cried so much. Why she was crying? Like so.
She had an existential crisis.
Yeah, again with the crying thing, she just doesn't like to see a woman cry.
Why does everything have to be like 2023? Like Oh my goodness.
She lived in the world of shiny.
We live in 23. We live in 2023.
And then women, they're like this, like, women, we're so oppressed, and Barbie's done so much damage to our culture. The women are like, yeah, so let's cash in on this and make millions off of it. And all these women are literally making like millions of dollars. Like, we're so
I mean,
oppressed.
women can make money. Women can be millionaires. Make that money.
Really annoys me is that they're like this. Like, why can't the big ending of like all the speeches, like, why can't we just be like ordinary Barbie? Why do we have to be Dr. Barbie or President Barbie or stereotypical Barbie, like without the cellulite and perfect and climbing the or like why can't we just be a mom? Why can't we not be a mom? Like why all of this stuff? Like why can't we just be ordinary Barbie? And then they have the idea like we should create ordinary Barbie, and apparently like so like crazy, like people are really into this. And then what's ridiculous though is that who wants like really of all these people actually acting? Like,
she is so fired up. I love how she's just like arms flailing, fired up, and he's just like sitting back, like chilling and giving that like 1,000-yard stare.
The plastic surgeries that they've had done, and all the work that they've had done, and it's like, yeah, so you're telling me all of you want to be ordinary Barbie? Is that why you got your buckle that removed in your nose job and your eyelid and your chin lift? Like you just want to be ordinary Barbie, and that drives me crazy because it's such a lie to these young girls and young women who are going like, yes, I want to be ordinary Barbie just like that person. Well, if you fork over thousands and thousands of dollars, you can also get all the surgeries to enhance yourself as well, And it's ridiculous. Like y'all are all of you women saying like, why can't we just be ordinary Barbie? None of you want that for your life, and so it's ridiculous. Like to me, all of that is so confusing and such a contradiction. But you're, at the end of the day, you are enough. Ordinary Barbie is enough, and you're still, what are young women left with? Nothing. No, that's at the end of the day, even being ordinary, like that's not enough because we do have a creator and we were made for more. But it's just, to me, it's just all a big poo-poo. So
I'm still waiting for her rating. Remember, I said she was going to give it a 4 out of 10. I'm still waiting, but I just wanted to comment on her, rant there real quick. I think it's interesting that like she took the time to look up like all the actresses and saw that they're like getting plastic surgery done and stuff like that, getting, like their buccal fat removed and getting, facelifts and nose jobs and, whatever else. And I think, when she says like, well, that's contradictory because the movie is talking about how you can just be ordinary Barbie and it's okay to have cellulite and it's okay to have this and that. It's okay to be ordinary. I think you can be ordinary and still want to look good. I'm an ordinary girl. Like, I don't want to have plastic surgery and stuff like that, but I'm wearing a wig and I'm wearing fake eyelashes and I have makeup on and I like the way I look. And I think that's the beauty of being a woman, is that we get to express ourselves in creative ways like this. And that's an ordinary feeling. It's an ordinary feeling to take joy in being a woman and being able to celebrate your femininity. So yeah, in a way, like, you can absolutely be ordinary Barbie and still want to look nice. And if your version of looking nice is getting plastic surgery and getting a BBL and like whatever else, do you. If that's what makes you feel good, if that's the way you want to express your femininity, if that's the way you want to spend your money, more importantly, do it. It's your life. Who is stopping you? And you can still be ordinary. You can still be ordinary with a nose job. You can still be ordinary with a facelift. You can still be ordinary with, a BBL. Like, that's such a weird statement to say, but you can be ordinary. Ordinary people have those things. It's not all just for Kim K and all of the other celebrities like her. Ordinary people have plastic surgery done all the time for one reason or another, or simply because they like the way it looks. Ordinary women put on wigs and put on fake eyelashes and put on makeup and film a YouTube video. I'm a normal woman living in a normal house. I mean, look at my background. It's not all fancy and shiny and bright and, mansion-esque. I live in a 950 square foot house. Like, I'm on an ordinary street in an ordinary neighborhood. I'm an ordinary woman, but I also enjoy looking good. And if someone wanted to pay for plastic surgery for me to get lipo or something, I mean, I'm not complaining. I would do that too. That doesn't make me any less ordinary. In fact, I think that makes me ordinary. I think most people change some part of their appearance. We don't go through life looking all 100% natural all the time, men and women.
I give it a really generous, on an entertainment scale, I give it a generous 3. On a would I ever recommend it scale, I give it a super generous 0-. Okay,
She really did not like it.
What's your rating?
I don't think so, babe. That's amazing. I think we just ended that.
No, you got nothing else?
No, because I gave a rating. I just did a lot of words.
Okay, y'all.
Go see it if you want to.
Go see it. Let us know what you think. And we'll see y'all again next week.
Bye-bye.
Oh, we did it, y'all. We made it to the end. But yeah, just my final thoughts to react on their final thoughts. Yeah, I think it's funny that she gave it a 3. I knew she was going to give it a low number like that, and that she gave it a -0 for if she would recommend it. And then at the end, when Dave is being normal and fair and balanced, he's like, hey, go see it if you want to, what's the big deal? Then all of a sudden she changes her tune and she's like, oh yeah, go see it. It's like, girl, literally 5 seconds ago you said you would recommend it to 0 negative people. So anyway, there's that. I also think it's funny that he didn't want to play along and give a rating either. And you know what, Dave, shout out to you for volunteering as tribute and sitting down and making this video, because I can tell from start to finish you did not want to be a part of it at all. And it sounds like you don't want to be a part of future social commentary videos either, which is kind of a shame, because I appreciated hearing your perspective more than Bethany's. And I think it's interesting that y'all have different perspectives, but apparently you make it work in your marriage. And, Bethany, being more of a traditional Christian woman, I thought you would be more subservient to Dave and let him lead you and guide you and be the head of the household. But here you are having your own opinion and challenging him. If you were a subservient Christian woman, if you were a trad wife, traditional wife, that's what the kids are calling it. If you were a traditional wife, why don't you adopt your husband's view of Barbie? He seemed to really like it. So, maybe you should let him be the leader of your household and be your spiritual leader and be, your guide, and take a page out of his book and lighten up. I'm just being a little shady, but I just couldn't help but throw that in there because, again, I think it's really funny that, these women like Bethany try to be like, oh, my husband's the spiritual leader. He's the head of the household. I follow in his footsteps. I follow his wisdom. I trust him to lead and guide us. And then here they have their own opinion and challenge them and stuff like that. I'm like, girl, please, you're as much as the leader of your household as your husband is. if not more so, because you do all of the behind the scenes work. There's a whole article about it called The Invisible Labor of Women, and it talks about how much women do behind the scenes, that if you had to pay for someone to do that, it would be really expensive. Like if you had to pay for a cook to come into your home and cook you 3 square meals a day, if you had to pay for someone to come into your house to do laundry, to clean it, to do all the general upkeep, you would spend a lot of money. But women end up doing those kind of jobs for free in their own households, on top of sometimes having a regular job out in the corporate world too. So anyway, that is my argument for why men and women are equal, and why I don't agree with, some more traditional Christian girls like Bethany, who have that whole trad wife mentality, or think that their husbands are, the spiritual leaders or the guides of their life in their household, when they get all fiery and feisty like this, and apparently have a lot to say. If she was a trad wife, she would have just pulled a Jill Duggar and just stared at her husband like this the whole time as Dave talks. If you didn't see Shiny Happy People, they have some clips of, is it Jill Duggar, Michelle Duggar, I can't remember her name, the Duggar wife. The way she looks at her husband, Jim Bob, I remember his name, she literally looks at him like this. She always looks up at him and never at the camera. It's so weird. But anyway, stay tuned for my review, responding to their review of Shiny Happy People. I'm really curious to see their thoughts and to see if they agree or disagree more on that topic, because they very clearly disagreed on this topic. Who knew that Girl Define's husband would turn out to be more of a feminist than even me, probably. But anyway, guys, since this is my very first video like this, like I said, if you would please leave me a review if you would like it. Let me know how you liked it. I'd love to read your comments and see what you think. That helps me know what you like or don't like and how I can grow and improve. So please leave a comment with your feedback and your thoughts. I'd love to continue the conversation and hear what you think about the Barbie movie and what you think about Bethany and Dave's review and perspective on it. Who do you agree with and why? I'd love to know. But yeah, I hope you have a great day, night, weekend, weekday, weekend, wherever you are. And stay tuned for my video on Shiny Happy People and much, much more. Until next time. Bye, y'all. Bye, Barbie. Bye, Ken.